News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Welcome to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning.
I'm Alan Gilbreth, darkoakmedia.com.
And I'm Maximilian with some pretty low-hanging fruit today.
Talk to me.
I'd like to wish you all, Larry Brown, National HVAC Tech Day.
Oh,
Awesome.
Wait a minute. Okay, that's going to probably play a role today, I would have to
You
think. Yeah,
It's
very good. Okay.
third day of summer. Oh, yeah, we're talking about air conditioning.
That's a good one, Max.
I'd also like to wish you all, although it's a little bit of a belated anniversary, a happy anniversary to all of our boys in blue in the Windy City. Happy National Blues Brothers. The release of it back in June 20th, 1980.
Now, that's sort of a left-handed salute, Max, because the boys in blue really took a beating in that movie.
Yeah, but the soundtrack was amazing.
That is one of the best movies ever made. And man, Alan, I was right in the thick of things while that movie was being filmed, and it changed this. It changed Chicago, I can tell you that.
Did it literally change Chicago?
It did. It gave us a lot of civic pride, and it got a lot of, I don't know, but...
a lot of destroyed cars.
That happens to be, I happen to know, Max, this would be the 44th anniversary. So,
correct.
Because it came out in 1980. What a great movie. That might play a role in today's conversation as well.
It's just getting older and older and older by the minute. Wow.
It ages well, though. It is funny.
And it's got good pickup.
It's got one of the best soundtracks.
Oh, the soundtrack is unparalleled.
All right, very
It's
good,
amazing.
Max. That is a good. What you said, it's belated, so it happened this week, I guess.
The 20th.
That's good enough for me. So, all right. Well, this is outstanding. We got a lot to discuss. So, if you want to chime in and get in on the conversation, you can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. Especially if you've got any favorite songs or favorite moments from the Blues Brothers movie. I'd like to hear that. Also, you can watch the show. You can go to the News Talk 98.9 The Roar's Facebook page and the News Talk 98.9 The Roar's X page. And while you're over on social media, scoot on over to the Tool Talk Radio Facebook page and check out the posts we've made over there. Speaking of Chicago, boy, this is serendipitous, Max. In our Great Moments in Building History, we're going to discuss the Chicago L train system. To be honest, I don't even know that that's what it's called. It's the L. Everybody
it's called
knows
the L, and it stands for elevated. Yep.
Right, and it is sort of an icon of the city, but it's really important to the success of why. I mean, Alan, you could fly into Chicago, jump on. You could go to Chicago and never even step foot in a car. You could, and you can get around just fine. So there's one of the reasons that it's become a big city, and it's partly because of their transportation, but there's a lot of other interesting things around this conversation. It goes back probably further than people might realize, too. So that's going to be good. Alan, we never got to our science discussion last week, and I'd really like to do it this week. I'm calling it science for lack of a better term. We posted that picture of the one that's going all over the internet of that pixelated picture of somebody holding a Coca-Cola can,
right? And
you realize there's actually no red in that can.
Correct.
And we are going to connect those concepts to architecture and interior design, and basically,
easily.
How does our brain work, and how can we use that to become better designers, things like that. We have Alan brought the must-have item of the weekend, so folks, we posted that. If you want to get an idea, but a peek behind the curtain of what Alan's, I think this is very telling. This shows kind of your thought process. There's a lot going on in this picture. So we're going to get to that. Alan's week in review sounds like it's wide-ranging once again. And I have another tool tale about my wife that I want to share. And I have more that I'm not going to tease because one of the things, we've been over-teasing lately, Alan. And
no, that would be you've been over-teasing.
Okay. And we don't want to do that. So... well, let's see. I do want to make a comment. Let's throw this in. Did you have something, Max, that you needed to?
I mean, I could always talk about the whole history of HVAC. It's a small history, but it's still kind of interesting.
Actually, do that because that ties exactly into what I wanted to mention. So go ahead.
All right. First, let's go back the Wayback Machine
because you said it's National.
It's National HVAC Tech Day.
Let me write that down.
Not Air Conditioning Day. Because it's a little bit more broad.
Okay, let me write that down. So we're saluting all of Larry Brown's
just
people.
Larry Brown right across the bat.
Okay. All right.
So let's talk about first with the Romans. They're the first ones to have be credited with developing the first central heating system that channeled hot air from a furnace through pipes inside the walls and beneath floors. And then we go to early Korea, where they had a similar system where they used, this is pretty cool, I guess you could kind of say recycling. They reused excess heat from cooking stoves to heat the air. And then we have the Muslims. I've always really liked, I think they were the first ones to kind of also make, I believe we did those structures before where, they channel the wind, like wind towers. But not only that, but, they're known to have constructed pipes under the floors to keep the entire building warm. And then we go to the ancient Egyptians who hung cold towels on the windows so that the air that came in contact with the towels would cool off the residents inside.
Okay, question. Is that an ancient swamp cooler, Alan? Because my daughter lives in New Mexico, and their situation is they need moisture. It's not like here where we're removing moisture.
Right.
And I think they use a system that sounds similar to that. Like it's
Well,
that's what a swamp cooler is, right?
Well,
it has to be
diversively, we would call them swamp boxes over here.
Not a very flattering name. They need better branding.
Well, but the idea is that they are having to bring their humidity level up to 50%.
Right.
We struggle in the Mid-South to get it down to 50% because generally outside of, we usually run somewhere around the 70 to 80%. And then when you get into a really good muggy day, we push it all the way up to it might as well just go ahead and rain.
Right.
So when you get out west, the biggest thing there is also soil desiccation.
Yeah.
It is so dry. It is so dry that when you build a building and you drop a foundation into the ground, they have to build a similar foundation out west as are people up north, because up north you have to get below the frost line.
Right.
Otherwise, ice can literally build up under your building and pick it up. Out west, what they worried about is the soil drying out so much that it actually retracts away from your foundation and lets you fall in the hole.
Right. Yeah.
So, it's very interesting depending upon what part of the country you live in.
Yeah.
Because when you get a double whammy when you get to eastern Washington State or Oregon. Because the western part of the state, aka the ocean side of the mountains, has this beautiful, water and moisture and, great weather and magnificent seafood. The other half of the state is fundamentally desert. Because the water doesn't get over the mountains.
It's interesting you say that. So I'll put a pin in that. I want to mention, I just want to say something. It's really interesting when you fly in an airplane because, we think of, at least, you look up in the sky and it's like, okay, well, there's just the sky and it's open and it goes out to the atmosphere and everything. But, man, there's like rivers of air back and forth, right? And it's like, have you ever noticed, you look at some clouds and it almost looks like there's a level of demarcation where a cloud almost looks like it's sitting on something transparent or something.
Yes.
I guess that's a cushion of air and everything. That always fascinates me that we could have these rivers of air currents up there affecting everything. And so you could have all this ocean air, and yet just because there's a mountain in the way, that blocks out all of the moisture and everything. And
it squeezes all the moisture out as the air tries to get over it. Yeah.
Pretty cool. All right, Max, sorry we interrupted you.
No, you're good. I'm just about finished. So getting to 200 AD, we have the Chinese who invented fans near water fountains that blew cool air through the room. And then, of course, we'd be remiss to not mention old Benny Franklin, because he brought advancements by experimenting with different chemical evaporation to learn how surfaces froze. And then getting to the more contemporary stuff where we get to actual ACs, we have Albert Marsh, who discovered chromel, which was an alloy made of chromium and nickel. And this alloy would be help herald the coming of electrical heating elements in the market, which were 300 times stronger than the element materials used at the time. And then finally, we have the Willis Carrier, who invented the first modern air conditioning unit by reversing the process of what a heater does.
Yeah. I think Larry Brown has a statue of Carrier in his shop. Well, he's his forefather, right? Isn't
Well,
that
everybody is the descendant of that original invention. So.
Okay. Well, so we got a lot of interesting things on the table today. You were making me think, though, Max, because you said this is the anniversary of the Blues Brothers release. I was thinking about it, Alan. You know, the Blues Brothers reminds me a lot of the Lord of the Rings. There's a quest. There's a,
They're on a holy mission.
They're on a mission. There's one of those. It's one of those things where they're fighting epic opponents. You could say they're overcoming obstacles. Doing it in a don't look at me that way, but I don't know. It's funny. There's got to be a reason a movie like this endures. I mean,
all right, well,
it's got all the features.
I will give you two simple facts about it.
Okay.
One, it's very operatic in the fact that it is music based because the soundtrack is killing.
It's the best.
The whole point is the band,
right?
Right. Two, it is very Shakespearean.
Yes.
And exactly how it is laid out.
And it has a Memphis connection.
Exactly. So, we might mention
Some
that.
of the
That's
musicians.
this is going to be a running theme. The Blues Brothers is definitely deserves our respect and admiration. So that's out there on the table. All right, we got a lot to get to, Alan. This is going to be a good one. You're listening to Tool Talk Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allen.
Did somebody say boom?
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Nobody said that, Max. I don't know where that came from. But anyway, welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I know better. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Alan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And we knew that we would be getting those today. Right out of the gate, I guess, first off the line, you said, is our buddy Agent 732 Max. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, what did he have to say? So
First off, the practical. Speaking of HVAC and AC, the guy who pioneered Freon was the same guy who invented GAD and CFCs, whatever those be.
Max.
So, that's fluorocarbons.
Fluorocarbon. He invented fluorocarbons? Is that
yes.
Is that an invention or is that a part of nature? So.
Well, no, it was an invention because it was a gas that could be pressurized, and we used it to, aerosol cans for years and years. Then we found out it did something we didn't want it to do.
Okay. Yeah. What was that? Is that the greenhouse stuff? Or?
Right. That would be, like eating the ozone layer.
Yeah, we don't want that. So, okay, well, then what was the other?
But he didn't know at the time, so he was working on industrial solutions.
Okay, and what was the other? What was that?
CFCs, like Memphis
CFC.
CFC.
MCFC. Okay, but what was that? I'm guessing that's
a CFC is a carbon fluorocarbon.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. And what else did what else did he have to say, Max?
They said, obviously, hands down, the best moment of the Blues Brothers is the second they got to their goal and the car falls apart, and also when they did Minnie the Moocher.
Yeah, Minnie the Moocher. What a great scene. And what a great song, So.
And I just wanted to say, too, that Blues Brothers also has a Memphis connection in the form of musicians such as Booker T and the MGs and Donald Dunn.
Donald Duck Dunn, and it's the Memphis Horns, right? That's the ones playing the horns in the Blues Brothers. So it's funny. I meet a lot of people from Chicago here in Memphis. There seems, you just go straight up about 7.5 hours. It's, we're in the same time zone. There's a lot of.
Sorry, and obviously BB King as well.
Yeah, BB King. Oh, BB King. That's right. Wait, no, he was in Spinal Tap. Was BB King in the Blues Brothers?
Yes.
When was he in? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I was trying to think of which song he was in. Well, folks, if you wonder why we're talking about the Blues Brothers, if you just tuned in, it's the 44th anniversary of the Blues Brothers. So that's going to be on the table. If you want to chime in, like we said, get in touch with us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline, 901-683-0989.
Although technically BB King was born in Itabena, Mississippi.
Yes, he was.
Right. Well, we know that, Max. So, okay. All right. Well, let's shift gears. Let's get to this, Max. So, I didn't give him enough time. Okay.
Science!
All right. So, Alan, we teased this last week, and I'm sorry, dear listeners, we didn't get to it, but we wanted to give it its due. So, I don't know. I'm guessing a lot of people, if you're on social media, and if you're not, go to our Facebook page and you can check out. We posted the picture last week, but basically what it is there is a picture, and it's very pixelated purposely. It's there's a person holding a can of Coca-Cola, like the classic red can. And what it tells you is it says if you zoom in, you will find there is actually no red in this can. When you look at it, it looks like this person is holding a red can, and yet when you zoom in, what you think is red are little black and white checkers. And it says that our brain is filling in the image to make it look red. And it really got me thinking, Alan, about the way our brains work, and people that understand that could probably do a lot of good or a lot of evil, I guess you could say, in the way we design spaces and things like that. The first thing that comes to mind for me is casinos. I mean, they obviously put a lot of thought into it's designed to make you spend money and to make you gamble and to make you, they put thought down to the carpet design and the angles of the wall. If you don't know what I'm talking about, folks, go down the rabbit hole sometime. They purposely make the carpet unpleasant to look at, so you're looking up at all the flashy things. There's no windows in casinos because they don't want you looking out and realizing what time it is and things like that.
I'll make it closer to home.
But what if we did that same approach, but in a positive way? What if we put that much thought into architecture and design to make the spaces maybe enhance our, maybe to make it calm, to make us focused, whatever. But I just think there's a lot more going on in architecture and interior design, and that's what I kind of wanted to unpack with this, understanding our brain functions and things like that.
Okay.
So, but I did have a question for you, Alan, and maybe I'm going to ask you. I don't know if you have an answer for this. My first question, though, is before we move on to architecture is, okay, so this is a picture of somebody holding a can of Coca-Cola.
Correct.
What if you live in a place where, for whatever reason, you've never seen a can of Coca-Cola?
Correct.
So you don't have a reference that the can is red or blue or anything else. Would you see a red can?
Yes.
Okay, why is that?
All right.
Because that's immediately what I thought. Do we have a universal type of filter in our brain that makes us see red?
Well, all right. Well, red is a Doppler effect. So red is a color commonly produced in nature and easily advanced.
Okay.
So you've seen red. If you have the power of vision, you have seen red.
Right.
You have seen that. Now, what you discover when you get into art school is that you start talking about colors in different ways. So, and for instance, you have a screen in front of you. If you're listening on the computer, you have a screen in front of you, in which case you're into a world called RGB.
RGB.
Which is the age-old tradition of our televisions since they were invented.
Okay.
Our TV is originally a cathode ray tube, had 3 little guns in it that fired electrons at a photosensitive sheet. If you took a look inside of a cathode ray tube, and there was a red one, a green one, and a blue one. And they are what produced the color pattern on your screen. If you've ever seen a screen printing process, it prints in these layers to produce the rich colors you see at the end of it.
Now I get layers. Yeah.
Now,
okay.
you get layers. Now, then you get really weird because other processes don't use RGB. They use CYMK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black.
Right.
And that everybody suddenly goes, hey, my inkjet printer uses those colors. And if you have a good, realistic photo quality printer, it only uses 4 inks. And it makes 16.4 million different color combinations.
That's what's interesting. That is very interesting. Yep.
Now I get to bring up the humble octopus and squid, who have understood these processes for millions of years, and their very skin contains photophores that allows them to experience CYMK on an emotional or direct mental capability.
Wait, they change colors, right?
Oh, they even get hypnotic.
Oh,
you look at like a squid squaring up at a crab. He will actually pulse in a hypnotic pattern,
right,
to keep the prey's attention where he wants it, not on the little grabby arms that are about to
Just
end
swinging
its
out.
existence.
Yeah.
Agent 732 is really firing on all cylinders today with regards to this topic.
Okay, what?
He said casinos use something similar called the Gruen transfer. It is a deliberate attempt to trick the brain by not using the cues we are used to in order to confuse our perception of time, passing, and spatial reasoning.
That's a very well-written sentence, Agent
It
732.
is.
I like that, and I think what was the main thing of that?
The Gruen transfer.
That must be named after somebody, right?
Yes.
It is an attempt to trick the brain by not using the cues we are used to.
Very
In other words,
interesting.
when they do a transfer of color, you're going to work in the same hue.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes directly back to your can. And ladies and gentlemen, this all ties directly back into painting your house.
Exactly.
Because this color
I got a whole checklist
is
of
so
things. Yeah.
important.
Right.
What color you put where and how you contrast it or how you transition from it drastically influences the sensation. And I'm going to make it even closer to home because I built a few of these back in the day.
Yeah.
And the amount of research that went into the colors in a restaurant is dramatic.
Right.
From a Chuck E. Cheese to a Dave & Buster's, they are very specifically designed to elicit certain responses.
Oh, I believe that.
And
yeah.
if you really want to see some manipulation, go to your local grocery store.
Talk to me.
Not only is it color manipulative, it is also location manipulative.
Is that why we have all the sweet cereals and stuff at eye level with the kids so that they'll pick that?
The stuff they make the most money on or that they want to push the most is directly in that 3 to 5 foot area, because you'll notice there's a lot of cereals below that and above that. But if you're in that sweet spot, you're selling a lot more of it because it's at that easy reach range. You'll also notice that the really popular stuff, milk, eggs, cheese, basic sundries, they're not at the front of the store. Where are they?
Yeah, you always got to go find
Way
them
into the back where you
Right.
got to walk through the whole store. And then as you approach the cashier, there's all the easy to grab tabloids, candies, sodas, chips.
The evil temptations.
The so easy to go.
I'm starting not to like grocery stores and casinos now.
Well, and then you got to look at the color of the packaging because you'll see like reds, a lot of reds. Love, passion, anger, wants you to make a move.
I knew we'd get mileage out of this one. It's interesting, though, and it plays a role, and we're going to continue to discuss it when we come back here on Tool Talk Radio.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allen.
Your Highness, I'm sure it's not that noticeable.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
I don't know what I just heard, and I have no comment, Max, other than it sounds like SpongeBob's up to his ears.
He's our
in
buddy
it.
Tom Kenny.
Okay. And we'll come back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning. Here with my buddy Alan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. If you're just waking up, we want you to know that today is an anniversary that we're definitely celebrating. It is the 44th anniversary of the release of the Blues Brothers. It's a couple days. It happened
It was this week.
Thursday. We don't care. That's close enough for us. We are wide open to your comments and memories of the Blues Brothers. We might sprinkle in some of that during the show. Also, it's National HVAC Tech Day, and also Max, you said it's Howard texted in and said what?
We got a loyal texter by the name of Howard. He said, "Good morning, guys. Today's Amateur Radio Field Day. It's being held at Municipal Park behind City Hall in Germantown."
That's ham radio, right, Max?
Correct.
Ham radio is an interesting thing. When the grid goes down, folks, and the apocalypse arrives,
Go to Howard.
Go find guys with
Those
ham
are the
radios.
guys that are still going to be able to communicate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but if you
Amazing.
want to communicate with us on any of this, thanks, Howard. Thanks for chiming in on that, man. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989.
But we don't accept ham radio, interceptions, or telegraph.
Yeah, I don't know how we can accept those. But you said it's at the Germantown what?
Municipal park behind Germantown City Hall.
Okay, perfect. So, well, hey, we're in the middle of a really interesting conversation. We're going to dive back into that momentarily, but of all days, we have to discuss our good buddy Larry Brown with Brown Refrigeration. I wonder how he's celebrating National HVAC Tech Day.
No, you're not wrong about selling.
Selling or celebrating. Yeah, he's obviously celebrating by working all day.
No, bless his heart.
That's my guess. But his techs, I mean, they're I don't one of the things we love about Brown Refrigeration is the great business culture that they've instituted over there. Larry Brown, and hey, we got to give a lot of props to Mrs. Brown. They've cultivated something really great with Brown Refrigeration. As we've said many times, your HVAC system is nothing. That is not a DIY project for yourself. That is something you need trained professionals, and you always want to be working with the latest in technology because it really will pay for itself. If you have, it's regulating all of the air in your home, the moisture, the cleanliness. You know, we love the Remy Halo system. It's a very affordable upgrade to your HVAC system, which uses the UV power of the sun to create clean air, and also I'd call it turbocharged air because every one of those particulates that comes out of your HVAC system cleans every surface that it lands on. It's pretty miraculous, Alan. And also they work with trained systems because that is they are always at the cutting edge of HVAC technology as well. Your HVAC system is something you need to keep an eye on. You should have Brown Refrigeration drop by the home, give you a tune-up, and check out your system at least once a year and keep it running efficiently. And if you need a new system, they have great financing as well. They're great people. We love the whole culture, like we said, over at Brown Refrigeration, and they answer their phones. You can get in touch with them at 901-362-1881 or go to their website, brownref.com. All right, if you're just tuning in, we're basically talking about, I don't want to unpack the whole thing, but what triggered it was a picture that's been floating around on social media of a pixelated a picture of somebody holding a Coke can. It's pixelated, and what we learn is that there is actually no red in the picture. Our brains are filling in things. And we're talking about the way our brains function and how that could be used in design, in architecture. And Alan's given us a lot of information about how grocery stores, and we've talked about how casinos use this type of thinking to influence their design.
And I just would be remiss while we're discussing this, too, with regards to the Gruen transfer, which we mentioned earlier, which, if just to recap the definition, is the moment when, in this case for shopping malls, which was its original intent, is when customers enter a shopping mall or store and when they're surrounded by an intentionally confused layout, which causes them to lose track of their original intent. But what's funny about this is the name actually comes from an Austrian architect by the name of Victor Gruen, who actually disapproved of such manipulative techniques.
But he's the one who pointed it out.
The Gruen transfer. Yeah. So now you just said something interesting too, Max. You said because that's what casinos do. And also, how many times have you gone to the store to buy something, you go home and you bought every other thing and you go, I forgot to get the thing that the main thing I went for.
You mean your wife?
What? I don't get what that means, man. But no, that's what happens when you shop without a shopping list, too. But yeah, it's like I got to run to the store and pick up flour, and you get everything but flour because you've been enticed by these other things. But Alan, we could also use this type of thinking for the good. I'm thinking of what if you're trying to design a school classroom that's conducive to learning, and things, or the playroom at your kids, at your house.
Could you design a jail for to be conducive for rehabilitation?
Yeah, bingo. Very good, Max. Yeah.
All right. Well, we already know that colors and psychology go together.
Sure.
So let's think about this for a minute. And this is where I'm going to say, admit your medical diagnosis. All right. If you know that you experience seasonal depression,
Right.
then you probably need a room in your house that is warm. AKA, it needs to have cheery colors.
Yeah, warm visually.
Warm visually. It needs to have the yellows and oranges and pastels, so that this is a place where somebody that has seasonal affective disorder could go to see natural colors from when they feel better. I mean, a lot of people have some level of winter depression.
Right.
So having a room designed to counteract that, well, there is proof that this works.
That makes me think of this movie called Ad Astra, where there's literally it's off Earth and everything, and they literally create rooms that simulate an Earth-like environment, like Earth pictures of plants and nature and stuff like that.
Oh, that's a great movie, by the way, folks.
Well,
but yeah, exactly. They recreate that because they know that traveling through space would wear on your psychology.
Kind of wears on you a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about being worn out. Let's talk about sleep.
Right.
A bad thing for sleep is blue light.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't know, Joe. I'm holding up something that emanates blue light.
Well, because my daughter, she doesn't need glasses, but when she works on her computer, she has she calls them blue light glasses.
Blue light filters.
So what is blue light doing for her? Is it overstimulating or?
Well, exactly. Blue light doesn't trigger your circadian rhythm. Therefore, you'll stare at a computer screen for hours and hours and hours, or you will look at your phone for hours and hours and hours and not trigger yourself to be tired or to go to bed.
I actually learned something kind of similar with regards to blue light from a personal trainer YouTuber that I like, named Jeff Cavalier. And he actually talks about blue light affecting your circadian rhythm and sleep. And some of the recommendations that he gave were either with refraining from looking at your phone an hour or a half hour before going to sleep, or if you're like him where he has to look at his phone, there's this color setting that you could do on your phone where, in my case, since I have an iPhone, I triple click it and I have it set to have the entire screen go red, so that you're looking at a screen that doesn't affect your sleep right before you about to go to
red
bed.
or amber light actually does not interfere with melatonin production. And will let you get sleepy and go to bed.
It might just take a little finagling on your phone settings with regards to color filters, but you can find it.
And I would say, Alan, you're talking a lot about colors and things like that. And I would say that it's not just paint color. The lighting and the paint, the light sources and paint go hand in hand, because you could have a red wall, but with the right amount of light, it actually looks pink, or it might look brown or so.
And a lot has to do with your window treatment.
Yeah.
What colors are you bringing in, and what are you converting them to?
Right.
So welcome to Basic Design Technology 101 of when you walk in and you start thinking about your home. That Coke can, to tie this all back in together, is an amazing example of unintended consequences.
Well, the other. So
it's a great looking color. You think it's an amazing color until you paint a whole room that color, and you stand back and look at it and go, if I sat in here for 10 minutes, I'd be crazy.
Right.
So it's not necessarily the color swatch that looks the best.
Right.
It is the color that gets the work done for the room for your purpose.
It also depends on the intent. Like, for example, this one classic horror book called The Yellow Wallpaper, where someone is literally driven mad by the color of the wallpaper.
Yes.
Yeah, that is not a real. You're making me think of something else, though, Al. You should, when you design, if you're designing your kid's playroom or something, don't position things where you think they look cool. Like, literally, you should get down to the height of your kids and look around the room from the height of what your kids are going to see. So crouch down, because you're 6 foot and your kid's 3 feet tall. So what the room looks a lot different from their perspective, and you need to design accordingly. So.
This was many, many years ago. Building a popular chain of restaurants. The first thing they did with the design crews and construction crews was honestly take us to the zoo.
Oh, there you go.
And the reason we went to the zoo was zoo displays are designed to let you see the animal, put the animal in a natural environment so they'll behave naturally, but it has to be insidiously safe. Because most critters like to run around on the stuff that breaks and falls off, and well, you can't have that in the zoo. You can't have your expensive ptarmigan, lying in the bottom of the display because none of the branches will hold it. So you have to make, the illusion that it's in its natural environment, but in reality, it has to be both on display and safe, and it has to look attractive.
Yeah.
And that was a really interesting lesson for a lot of us because most of us had the same idea everybody else has. Well, box it in and get it out there.
There you go. Yeah. A lot of interesting stuff. We're going to have a few. We can't make the whole show about this,
Right.
but I knew this would be a good conversation. And we'll continue it and move on to some other good stuff when we come back here on Tool Talk Radio.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
I assure you, Lord Vader, my men are working as fast as they can.
Perhaps I can find new ways to motivate them.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Talk about using colors positively for psychology.
Absolutely. The Emperor knows all about feng shui and how to intimidate your subordinates. And welcome back through design. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Alan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And a lot of people have been doing that. They've been talking about the Blues Brothers, which it's the 44th anniversary of the Blues Brothers, and lots of other things involving our conversation. It's funny, Max, you just played you just made a Star Wars reference. The Emperor is another great example of how to design with intent. If you ever go into his throne room, there's no seats for anybody else. You're basically, he's sitting there comfortably, and you're standing there next to a trench that'll throw you down, to infinity. And so he knows about design concepts. So.
Yeah.
But Alan, and we will move on. But we were talking about the psychology, really, of architecture and design, and how we could use those for good or for ill. Like we said, some places, casinos, they use those to really separate you from your money. We can use those for positive things.
Oh, yes.
And we were talking about maybe school design or designing things in your home to make it conducive for peace and harmony. What, Max?
Well, with regards to like color choices and everything, our buddy Michael Boomerang has a question about color choices. How about using your favorite colors? I kind of have my own opinion about it, but would you like me to share mine first or yours?
You share yours. I got an immediate thought to Michael, so go ahead.
My immediate response is the idea of favorite colors don't necessarily make good room colors because
Exactly.
you don't, like when you in application and everything, you can have an item that's of your favorite color, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should paint your entire room chartreuse.
Or
Although
yellow.
I have a twin brother who would probably disagree.
Yeah. Or orange. We just for kicks, we painted our kids' room orange, and you couldn't. That didn't last very long, Alan. They wanted we wanted an orange room. We painted it, and you walked in there and you wanted to just throw a chair through the window.
That's because orange elicits excitement.
It was terrible. So, Michael, I don't know. Maybe you could use it as an accent. Maybe put an item there that's your favorite color.
Now, here's a question for you with regards to stimulation or overstimulation or understimulation for being conducive to sleep or lack thereof. How about Baroque rooms with all those gaudy paintings hanging above the ceiling and the glitter of the gold on the walls? It's like, is that just are you just not going to sleep at night?
That's what
in
I
a
wonder,
Baroque
too.
room?
Well, it's funny you mention that, Max, because that ties into something I wanted to mention before we move on to this conversation. There's a coffee shop over. I went there with my daughter last week. It's over in Midtown, over on Broad Avenue, and it is as simple as could be. It is literally brick walls, concrete floors, an exposed ceiling where the rafters have been painted white, and some dangling lights. And it is the most comfortable, inviting space I've ever. I mean, it's the wind. I think there's something to that, the simplicity, but also the proportion of how much sunlight comes in with the windows. And you don't always need and it makes you want to drink coffee, even though I don't drink coffee, but it's very it's a great hangout. It was packed when we went there, and so sometimes I think maybe it has to do with proportions of the proportion of light source, the proportion of how much what you have hanging on the walls, what you have, you know what I mean? This was not, it had a few little items on the walls, and every item you noticed because it wasn't crowded in with 5,000 other items like a Baroque home, like you said.
Well,
so,
all right.
So proper proportioning, I would say, maybe.
All right. We had one wall we were putting into a restaurant, and this happened to be in the bar area. And behind the bar, I started painting the wall black. And you would have thought, I mean, everybody went berserk.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, you can't do that. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. That's terrible. It's terrible. But I had already seen the finished plans. And I knew how much of the wall was actually going to be visible.
Yeah.
So I painted the wall black. Then, of course, came the counters and all the stuff. And now the counters were warmer colors. They were blonde wood, blonde oak.
Right.
So now they really stood out and popped against that black wall. And then the shelving went up. And then the bottles went up on the shelving. And then the lighting went in. And you could probably now only see about 20% of the wall versus everything else that was now on the wall. And now the wall had utterly disappeared. And the only thing you saw were the things they wanted you to see.
Right.
So welcome to the battle. And again, I go back to your Coke can because the unintended consequence of the hue, the saturation, and the luminosity of that picture, I know 3 more things that have to do with the color, of create the illusion to your eye that there is a red there. But as you zoom in and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you realize what you're seeing is a false image created by your eye in the difference between the hues of the white space and the dark space.
And what started off our conversation was I asked you about, would everybody see the red, even if you've never seen a Coke can? And you said yes. So it seems like our brains all have a universal kind of, I don't know what, filter or perception or something. So proper design techniques would work for most people, I would think.
Well, humans are designed to see patterns.
Okay. That's
our
good point.
brain is designed to see patterns. That is how we find our way home. That is how you and I found our way through this building this morning. Because this building is not exactly the most ergonomically friendly thing in the world. It's designed to have soundproof studios.
Right.
It's not designed to be an easy walk in the park.
Yeah.
But yet we find our way to our studio perfectly fine, no problem at all. But that's because your mind thinks in terms of patterns. And patterns are how you lay out your yard, how you did your landscaping, where you put the furniture, how you want to put that table in there. And everybody's mind sees patterns the way you've been taught, you've learned, and experienced over your lifetime. So people in Asian cultures lay a room out differently than people from Western cultures. And it's just not it's not bad, it's just different.
Right.
Because that's just how they're comfortable. So to answer your Baroque question, if you love Baroque, you're going to sleep like a baby in that room. You, I happen to know, are a minimalist, so you are probably going to start chewing the wallpaper after about 3 hours.
Yeah.
Because it's just not what you're used to. So.
Well, I knew this would be an interesting conversation, but
color is king. Color is such a massive topic when it comes to your home, your DIY, and all of your finished products.
All right, we are going to get to other stuff, but now you're making me think of something else. I just want to one last parting comment. Okay, Allan. So when I went to school, basically I went to 3 main schools. I went to junior high. I went to elementary school, junior high, and high school. And all 3 buildings were built in very different time periods. The most modern was the elementary school, and the windows were positioned pretty high. So if you looked out the window, you saw either the blue sky or a top of a tree. And in high school, the windows were huge. It was this old, it looked like a castle. Glenbard West High School, big shout out, built in 1914. But basically, you could look out at this beautiful scenery, and
And you did.
And I did, and I got the worst grades of my career in high school. Maybe I was too distracted by looking out the window at everything.
Very possible.
You think that could play a role?
Oh, yeah.
Could it
absolutely.
also have to do with the height of the particular student now that
I
you're in
don't know.
elementary? It's like the idea of like when I go back to my elementary school, it's like, man, the wall, it's so much smaller. It was so much bigger back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when you're 3 foot tall, the world is a very different place.
I just have to think there is so much psychology, and let's give it a lot of thought in designing our homes and designing our spaces and
yes.
our businesses. But anyway, well, we're going to move on to some other stuff. In our second hour, we've got, Tool Tales, our must-have item, Allan's Week in Review, and, of course, our great moments in building history. You're listening to Tool Talk Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989, like some of our listeners have been doing today. Lots of interesting conversations. You can also watch the show at the News Talk 98.9 The Roar's Facebook page and the News Talk 98.9 The Roar's X page. And we also invite you, while you're on social media, to drop in at the Tool Talk Radio Facebook page, especially if you're wondering about Allan brought in the must-have item of the week. And I think it reveals a lot about his psychology, his mode of operation, and just, his thought process. So if you want to get a behind-the-scenes kind of insight about Allan Gilbreth, go to our Facebook page and check it out. There's a lot of interesting conversations on the table today, including the fact that this is the 44th anniversary of the release of the Blues Brothers movie, and we have a lot of fond memories. I could quote, that's one of those movies, you know how you can quote a movie by heart, like, and every song is great, and there's so many classic lines, and it's just a really brilliant movie that holds up even today, 44 years later. So if you want to celebrate with us, that's on the table. And in I guess I would say in harmony with that, in our great moments in building history, later in the show, we're going to be talking about the Chicago L system, which is stands for the L train and everything. But before we get to that, Max, let's get to this item.
And now, Tool Tales with Tool Talk Radio.
Well, once again, Allan, this is a story about my wife. And, it's more I was getting insight, and I think this is useful information for the listener. So I was talking to her. I was having a frank conversation with my wife last night.
Okay.
And I said, look, so I came home after a long day of work, right?
Right.
And I come home, and she's in the front yard trimming bushes with her Sawzall and with her clippers and everything like that.
Okay.
And she was taking out, what is that one bush that's got the really awful spiky leaves on it? I hate that
Welcome
thing.
to the holly bush.
The holly bush. And it seems like so there was this holly bush that was taking over this one area, and she was taking it out,
Dismantling it.
basically. And it seemed like the holly bush was taking all the nutrients from our other bush that was in the front. But she was out there doing this, and I said, I got to ask you something, because in the 21 years we've lived in this home, I've done the majority of the cutting the grass and the landscaping and everything. And over the last 6 months or so, that whole thing has flipped. Like, she's become an enthusiastic, I would say, landscaper.
Okay.
I say, why is that? What? It's like something flipped a switch. And she goes, you know what? I think it's the tools. I bought her a Sawzall. If you've listened to a past show, I bought her it was for Mother's Day. Because I broke her other Sawzall and everything. And then we've got an electric lawnmower, which is very lightweight and quiet, and it makes it pretty nice to cut the grass. But she's out there doing all this stuff, and it gave me some insight, Allan. It's not a bad thing to get your wife using tools, man. Because I hate doing the grass, as you know. But it's interesting. So
I will go back in time to when Black & Decker was making a lot of hand tools for the war effort, World War II, and they were looking at the orders from a couple of factories, and a couple of factories kept ordering drills.
Right.
And the old boy in charge of all that was terrified that they were breaking.
Oh,
And-
like where are all these drills?
You're like, why are they keep ordering? I mean, we love the money, we love the sales, but his first reaction was one of fear that we have a quality problem.
Right.
And the last thing I want to do is provide a quality problem to the U.S. government.
Yeah.
So he literally went running out there, and to his shock, what was happening was, as they had kind of a tool retirement program, because all the women were buying the tools and taking them home.
Sure.
Because, man, this was great. Are you kidding me? Instead of sitting there with the hand grind and trying to muscle your way through something, I'm telling you, folks, the proper tool at the proper time makes anything so much more enjoyable to do.
Right.
So I could see that 30 years ago, dragging a 200-pound lawnmower around
With all the gas fumes
with the
and all
thing
that.
and the this and the that. And now, you've got, well, even a gasoline-powered lawnmower has greatly evolved, and the materials we use for it are lighter and easier.
Right.
And they now auto start, and they now have power drive. And now with the battery systems, I mean, you honestly, you have something, you put a battery on it, you press one button, and it's easy to push. It takes care of the job. And as you and I both know, the minute you convert it over to the right size electric drill or a tool like a reciprocating saw,
Yeah.
these things are life-changing.
You know what else? I had an insight because here's what happened. So I came home and she said, "Can you help me with this one thing or whatever?" Now, folks, I came home after a day of literally the whole day I spent doing things that involved, I was doing my carpentry, but it involved lots of measurements, lots of math, lots of calculations, lots of fine cutting and sanding. And I came home and she said, basically I needed to cut out this one bush. So I grabbed the Sawzall, lopped off limb. It's very satisfying. You know how that is. Like within seconds, you're chopping through limbs. It's destruction.
Yeah,
But
I did 4
there's-
yards yesterday. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think there is something, I understand why she's beginning to get hooked, because it seems to me in landscaping and in this type of work, you're beautifying your space through destruction. You know what I mean? It's like you
I
chop
know what
that
you mean.
ugly
Yeah.
holly limb, and it's very satisfying, because demolition is always the most fun of any job, and so I think there's something to that, tying those both together.
I did this for a client. She had this beautiful little archway between two very huge bushes. And the archway had kind of filled in a little bit so that every time you walked through, something touched you. Like a branch, the leaves, touched you. And it made it not comfortable to go through.
Right.
And, of course, I walked back out to the truck, got the powered hedge trimmer, but, slapped that big old battery in it, walked up behind it, and just went whackety, 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 whackety in an arch shape all the way around the inside of it. Cut all the little limbs and little thingies and vines and honeysuckle and all that. Just 30 seconds. It was honestly 30 seconds of work. And you'd have thought the clouds had parted and the sun had begun to shine, because it made that much of a difference, but it was that easy to do.
Immediate results. There's something
Instant
to that too.
gratification. Instant
Yeah.
gratification.
No, it makes a lot of sense. So, folks, I would say if you think that, if you're out there and want your spouse, and it could be either spouse, let's face it, maybe they just need the right
Yeah,
tool. If
I
they're
am
not
available to
motivated
give tours at the big box store. I still do them.
Yeah, that's how Allan makes half of his living. So, all right, well, that was my tool tale, and I will.
That's awesome.
I will keep you. I'll report back next time. So, all right, Max, let's shift gears. Let's get to our must-have item of the week. And I'm opening this. This is a well-used and well-worn. This is Allan's. I'm holding it up to the camera if you're looking at us on our Facebook page. But go ahead and let people know what I'm holding up, Allan.
Well,
I'm going to take a few of these items out, too.
It is what is a belt-looped utility pouch. And I have all of the quickie items that I use every single day,
Yeah.
all in one tiny little pouch. And I will tell you why I wear that. I carry it in the truck. I use it at home. I use it everywhere because I hate wasting time walking.
Yeah. And if you can carry it, and this is light. This is probably 2 pounds, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this
you
is
don't
not
even know
heavy.
what's on your hip. Yeah, you wear this, you're good. And I cannot tell you the number of times a day I use that box cutter.
Yeah.
And I use the stubby screwdriver and the little tiny flathead screwdriver. Honestly, those 3 items get used virtually every single day.
Yeah, because you've got basically you got an Allen wrench set. You've got a needle nose pliers, although they've got like the Swiss Army attachment.
Oh, yeah.
You've got the screwdriver with changing heads, and you got the mini screwdrivers, which I know that's your staple. But you got to have this is where you and I differ a little. You like the box cutter that I'm holding up here. I'm a fan of the breakaway blade razor, which I know you don't like, but I don't care. It works for me, Alan. But
that's different. I mean, everybody likes a different tool. I just don't like the little breakaways because I end up pulling them out of shoes and boots all the time. So
oh yeah, they do.
You got to break away carefully. Now, the biggest thing to this is just simply the convenience of being up a ladder.
Yeah.
And now I got to unscrew something. I got to pry something loose. I got to cut away a little piece of paint.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you the number of times I have to cut out a receptacle cover or light cover that's been painted into the wall for the last 30 years.
Well, what I also like about this pouch is over the years, I've gravitated more towards canvas pouches over the leather.
Right.
I know some people, leather is basically indestructible.
leather's
You're not
king.
going to hurt it, but I like the lightweight. I like how light the canvas belts are. And also, like you said, this is an attachment. This one, they're modular now. You could get a starter belt.
Oh, yeah.
And then add on the different features you want, and it's very versatile. And that's one of the reasons I like them. And a little tip, folks, if you have a canvas tool belt and it's starting to get a little funky because of sweating and stuff like that, hang it out in the blazing sun for about 4 or 5 hours, and it'll get rid of that.
Clean it up in no time.
Kill the smell. Don't try to wash it; it's not going to help. Just hang it in the sun, and you'd be amazed. It'll refresh the thing.
That particular pouch there is over 10 years old, and it's Kevlar.
It doesn't hurt, but
so it can take a bullet.
Yeah,
it
you
could.
Keep it with you.
It really could.
All right, this is going to be interesting. In our great moments in building history, we're going to talk about the Chicago L system, which I am very familiar with, and how it impacted the great city of Chicago. You're listening to Tool Talk Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Alan. News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Simple enough. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Alan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And we've been getting some nice texts this morning from some of our loyal listeners, and especially chiming in about the 44th anniversary of the Blues Brothers. If you want to share your memories and celebrate the Blues Brothers along with us today, feel free to get in touch. All right, Max, let's hit it, man.
And now, great moments in building history.
All right. Well, this is interesting, and I guess in harmony with the Chicago heavy references today. We're talking about the Chicago L system, which I don't know. There's probably a proper name for it, but everybody calls it the L for the elevated train system. And I grew up in Chicago, so I'm very familiar with it. I've ridden it thousands of times, but basically, if you've ever seen any movies or any pictures of Chicago, you can't miss the train tracks that are elevated, and they go and people can drive under them, like the Blues Brothers during that high-speed chase, or in the Batman movies and stuff like that. But there's practical reasons that they elevated the tracks that we'll get into, and if you've ever wondered why Chicago grew to be such a powerful city, for one thing, it's right there on water. It's easily it's a good place if you're transporting things through ship and through railways, but also if people want to get around. Literally, Alan, you could fly into Chicago and never step foot in a car, and you could get around fine. There's so many options. You can take the train from O'Hare Airport, ride in wherever you want to, and that does make a difference. But building it goes back further than people may realize. It goes back to June 6, 1892, so we're right around that anniversary. And if you recall, folks, that there was something very pivotal that happened in Chicago in the year 1893, which was the Columbian Exposition, the Chicago World's Fair, which really was a game-changing and revolutionary event. There were so many inventions that came out of that, and so many people that were there that were pivotal throughout our history. And Alan, a lot of them, they made it there through riding the L system. Back then it would have been coal-fired trains, but it connects the city and it connects the whole community. So,
well, of 1895 here in Memphis, of one of the big things cities started looking at about 1890 was transportation, because the idea was we got to move goods, and Chicago. I want to just bring up Chicago, St. Louis, Memphis, New Orleans, Natchez, Mississippi, anything up and down major waterways really started looking at, okay, I can get, in the case of Chicago, we got the whole Great Lakes system.
Right.
And they were working on canals and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's kind of the age of engineering because steam powered has hit. So in Chicago, first thing is like, all right, well, one, Memphis has a little too much water. So the idea of a subway, because subways were a thing, we really couldn't do subways here. We got clay soil and a high water table and a big river. So we kind of went streetcars and trolleys.
Yeah.
All right. Chicago, believe it or not, actually had a similar problem. Chicago is more or less reclaimed marsh. So they're a little damp, and they have got a great big huge lake right there.
Right.
So basically they're on a freshwater ocean. So a subway really wasn't a great idea, but Chicago was already growing. So to elevate a train, and the very first train was a steam-powered train until miraculously an invention at their own World's Fair changed everything.
Okay.
The third rail with electricity.
Right.
Was actually introduced at their own World's Fair.
Well, I want to just say something because I know people are yelling at the radio right now. They're going to say, hey, Alan, we have subways in Chicago. And in fact, you could be riding on a subway that goes up out of the street and then it goes to street level, then it goes up onto the elevated track. So what's the deal with that? Is that because it's further inland or something? Or maybe
and later technology.
It was built. So that's what I wondered.
And
I didn't research that.
Keep in mind, when World War I hit, which is, just a few years after this, anytime you have a big event in the world like that, you have drastic jumps forward in engineering, architecture, and techniques.
Right.
So, all of these things continue to grow because, like I said, they'd already put in the South Side Rapid Transit Railway was a standard steam train. And then they had, in 1893, their World's Fair. They're like, well, we can put electricity in the third rail. And that changed everything.
It did, yeah, and it's interesting because the timing is just really fascinating to me. I have to believe, they knew the world, it's not like they didn't know the World's Fair was coming. And so the whole infrastructure of the city seems like it was ramping up for that because, like I said, the first L system opened in 1892, a year before the exposition, and like you said, it was steam powered. And then within, I want to say, I'm looking at the dates here. I think within a couple decades, they had transferred over to electrical. But, Alan, that creates its own problem. It's one thing if you're a pedestrian and you just walk across some railroad tracks. which could be laid out at street level.
Right.
They could be well, when you start electrifying them out, and plus that's a very new technology. Now you have to think of safety. The whole thing has to be built differently, right? I mean, which is probably another reason for elevated tracks, because they're off the street, they're away from where people are walking.
Exactly. It solved so many problems. And then we get to a guy named Charles Tyson, and I love his last name, Yerkes.
I love that. Yerkes.
Mr.
Yerkes. Yeah.
Mr. Yerkes. Mr. Yerkes had some money and some businesses downtown, and he really had the vision. He got the bug.
Yeah.
Because he thought that having a train would make downtown everything.
Right. Yeah.
And, of course, a few years later, by 1897, they had the L in the northern elevated connected to the loop. And by 1921, this was pretty much a done deal for Chicago.
Yeah.
And like you said, you could bring your steamer into the port of Chicago, and then you could get on the L, and you could be almost anywhere in the Metroplex area, back from wherever it is you were, back off the L, back to the docks, and you didn't have to hire a cab. You didn't have to, so moving people and plus moving employees really made Chicago just slam into life.
I have to make an on-air confession. Well, I don't know how horrifying of a confession it is, but okay, I grew up there, and I know where the loop is. I know what the loop is.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew where the name came from. I just thought it had to do with it being in the central hub of the business district. Well, the loop, as I learned yesterday, literally, it came from the fact that the L trains formed basically a rectangle around this one particular area, which is the loop. And so they called it the loop because you could ride on the train around that area. And I'm like, well, you learn something new every day. How do you like that, Alan?
Why'd they call it a loop? Because it was.
And then
there
it's spread out around there. And, it's funny because they're built. So the main part we're focusing on is the fact that it's elevated. The more you're talking about it with the electrical component, that makes a lot of sense why it would be elevated, because you have to it's dangerous. You can't just let people walk across. And the way those platforms are designed, you can't walk across unless you purposely jump down and,
And I have to wonder, and there's really nothing in the history of why they did the L, exactly why they did it, other than there was a policy meeting. They went, we're elevating. This avoids pedestrians. This gets all the solves all the problems for us. But, the advent of the delivery truck and the advent of the automobile were right on the heels of the L.
Good point.
And Chicago really never had the conflict that other people had. For instance, in digging a subway meant you really screwed up a whole lot of territory because you had to go dig it up and then bury it.
Right.
And they didn't do that in Chicago. Now, they did later.
Yeah.
They've got subterranean L rides and all that. But we're talking about the actual turn of the century, and Chicago really chose wisely.
And we have there's a lot of interesting anecdotes with this too, because it wasn't universally loved. And it's interesting how the sensibilities of the L system have evolved over time. And we're going to talk about that when we come back here on Tool Talk Radio.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Floor feels a little gritty here. Yeah, we ran out of floorboards there, so we painted the dirt. Pretty clever.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Allan, when you paint dirt, do you use oil or latex? I have to believe acrylic.
Epoxy.
Yeah, okay. That'll work. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning. Here with my buddy Alan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. In a minute, we're going to get right back to our great moments in building history, which is a pretty interesting conversation. about the Chicago L system. But speaking of Big M Roofing and Remodeling, it's a good time to remind you that if you have any needs for the exterior protection of your home, Jay Hill's the man to call with Big M Roofing and Remodeling. They specialize in roofing, gutters, siding, and windows, and really and interior remodeling as well. But we always lean heavily into his roofing expertise because Jay is a GAF Master Elite Installer. They are always 5 stars with the Better Business Bureau, and if you go and you look up their rating on the Better Business Bureau, you're going to be thoroughly impressed. They are right there at the top among the elite roofers in Memphis. And also, there's another great reason to get to work with Jay Hill. It's the fact that he's a former insurance agent, which is hugely important because the outside of our home, it can take a beating, any part of the home, but especially the roof. And if any of that damage that happens to your roof is covered by your homeowner's insurance, that is a very complicated process to navigate without help. If you have help, though, like Jay Hill, he can help you understand whether you have a path forward, whether you will be covered by your homeowner's insurance. And if you are, that makes a huge difference. However, it's important that you do things in the proper order. If you suspect that you have some damage to the outside of your home, Jay Hill should be the first person you call. Don't call the insurance company first. You want to get this stuff mapped out in advance, and then you have an advocate. And also, GAF is the exclusive roofing materials Jay uses because they create roofing systems. These systems are so efficient and well-functioning that they basically guarantee these for life. They have a lifetime transferable warranty. They're always at the cutting edge of roofing technology. And we love the great business culture that Jay Hill has created with Big M Roofing and Remodeling. Jay also encourages you to call him directly. So do that. You can reach him at 901-484-5645 or go to his website, bigmroofingandremodeling.com. Well, Allan, in our Great Moments in Building History, we've been talking about the Chicago L system, basically the elevated train system, which I've ridden on many times. By the way, folks, if you ever go to Chicago and you want to go to beautiful and historic Wrigley Field, just jump on the red line and it'll take you right there, a block away. But, Allan, it's interesting because like any technology or anything new, it evolved over time, and not everybody was a fan. Some people said these things are noisy, which you can't deny. They can be noisy when they're rushing past. They didn't always like if you were a store owner and you had an elevated track in front of your store and you never got any sunlight, and it was kind of, maybe you didn't like that or something. But it's funny how sensibilities change because there was a period, even going back to the 1920s, where there was a movement, people wanted these things gone. They said these tracks are ugly. And then over time, it became something that they liked. And then now it's I would almost say these are protected by like they're almost like a historical landmark. And now people really like them. And it's always interesting to me how something goes from being old to being classic. You know what I mean? Do we tear this thing down or now do we preserve it forever? And it's I guess there's probably some formula to that. How many decades you have to pass before something becomes a classic?
It is a lot in public perception, and I'll pick on your movie for a moment.
Okay.
Several movies have done great scenes under the tracks.
Sure.
And it kind of gives it a cool effect. All right, that's fabulous. You can build a movie set to do that. But to be honest, it just fits in to Chicago.
It fits that kind of blue-collar, street-level, gritty aesthetic of Chicago.
It's been there. If you've lived in Chicago your entire life, I'm looking at you and me. We're not exactly brand new at this. If you've been there your whole life, they've just always been there.
Yeah.
It's just how things are done. And I'm going to throw in for a lot of municipalities out there, since we are listened to around the world, and we do have listeners in Chicago, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
If it's working for you, hey, go with it. And as a matter of fact, right now I think they're talking about adding onto the L and heading over to like the southeastern part of the city or other areas that are not currently serviced by the L.
Yeah, they expand over the decades. If you look at a map, you'll see like where they started, and it expands like a spider web or something like that. But I can tell you, having if you go to Chicago, for one thing, rush hour traffic can be pretty brutal.
Yes,
and there's nothing more satisfying than, like I said, when I go to Chicago, a lot of times I will fly in and I'll just jump. Literally, you don't even have to go outside. The train picks you up underneath the airport. And you could go to the city, and there's nothing more satisfying than zipping by all these people sitting in gridlock traffic, and you're just like, boom, you're downtown in 20 minutes. It's pretty cool.
You're off having lunch at Union Loop, and then you're back out to the other side for a business meeting.
Yeah.
Welcome to the L.
And it's cheap. I mean, literally, you can get like a weekend pass or whatever for like $15. A daily pass for like $5. That means you go from train to train. You could go do it all day if that's what you want to do. But I did have a question, Alan. Okay, 2 questions. So they said they built these. They used a riveting system that allowed to, where is it? Oh, okay, here it is. They used what they call a close rivet system to withstand the forces of passing trains' kinetic energy, because obviously there's a lot of movement and stresses on these. And these L tracks are still there. They're holding up. Is that, does the riveting system, because it looks like it's almost like an erector set when you look at how these are put together.
Yes, exactly.
That works to its advantage, though, right? Because it's moving, it's flexing.
Thank you, Mr. Eiffel, for some of these brilliant ideas that we put into practice around the world. Yes, it was designed not only to take the crushing weight of a train, because keep in mind, that baby's pushing down, but it's also moving forward. So as the train and the weight and all of that motion transfers down the track, as it transfers from trestle to trestle, they're designed to flex and take it.
Right.
And that has led to their longevity.
I think the only thing I would say, though, is with all of our modern technology and all of our modern advances, the one thing about the L train that has not changed, and you better be ready for this if you've never ridden on one. And they're very jerky. They accelerate really quickly. They stop really fast, and they kind of bump around a lot. And when you're riding in one, I mean, you're kind of getting a workout. And if you're standing, you have to hold on to the rails and stuff.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a way to lessen that, Alan. You think there's some technology out there that, like in the shock absorbers or something that could be improved?
I'm sure they could probably dress that up a little bit.
Anyway, and there's a certain brutalist charm that I like. I know you and I butt heads about I don't know. Would you call those steel girders brutalism, or they're very charming? I like the look of the L tracks.
That is almost, I would almost call that goth architecture.
Maybe that's why I like, because it reminds me of Batman. As soon as I see it, it makes me think of Gotham City.
You would go all Gotham on that. It has a certain aesthetic, and again, it fits Chicago.
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing.
It's great. It's one of the world's best transportation systems for a city, and it works. And I know lots of people that live in Chicago that don't even own a car because you don't need one. You can get around there. So, but that's our great moments in building history, the Chicago L line. And if you go to the city, I highly recommend getting around there. It's a great way to see the city, but you will get a workout.
Oh yeah.
Sitting still. But all right, well, Alan, we're gonna shift gears. I shudder to ask, but let's see what happened. It's kind of late in the show to be getting to this, but we're gonna find out what Alan did this week on Alan's Week in Review. So
well, first off, I'm going to tie exactly a lot of what I did this week directly into our holiday today.
Oh, nice.
About HVAC technicians.
Okay.
Because I had to have a number of arguments with potential clients over the use of HVAC and their buildings. Because
was it the misuse?
Well, it is the potential misuse.
Okay.
And again, I'm going to give a huge shout out to Larry and all of his guys over the years that have educated me as to exactly what HVAC really honestly does.
Yeah.
And yes, it cools or yes, it warms, But honestly, it is the air conditioning part of this that kicks in. And the fact that it keeps the humidity in your home or business 50, 60%.
It wasn't until I met Larry Brown that I learned what an air conditioner is actually doing. It's removing heat and it's removing moisture from the air, which
Yes.
I don't even know how it does it. I still don't really understand the processes, but that's it. It's, I don't know. To me, all it feels like is it's blowing out cold air. But, there's a lot going on.
If that cold air was wet, it would feel so much worse. And the topic was, I have a client mothballing a building for a couple of months, and they were going to turn off all of the HVAC. So, and I'm going to get into
that even triggered me when you said that. Okay, yeah.
And I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're going to keep this building. It doesn't have to be 68 degrees in here. It can be 78 degrees if you want, but it's not going to be without HVAC for the summer months in the Mid-South when we constantly run 70, 80, 90% humidity.
Right.
Because 3 months from now, when you guys get all ready to get in here and start your building conversion, now you're going to be dealing with mold.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
because there's
all the
wallpaper
expansion
and there's
contraction
carpet
and the whole,
and I'm like, if you really want to age and destroy your
I bet you the furniture would hate it too.
Oh, well, the chair, I've learned those wooden chairs, they do pop.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Allan triggered me with that provocative statement. So this is going to be interesting. We're going to continue our conversation of Allan's Week in Review when we come back here on Tool Talk Radio.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
But hear me and hear me well. The day will come. Oh, yes. Mark my word. Your day of reckoning is coming when an evil wind will blow through your little play world and wipe that smug smile off your face. And I'll be there in all my glory, watching as it all comes crumbling down.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Allan, that sounds almost word for word what you told these people when they said they wanted to leave their building empty.
That's
for
how you were
3 months.
recording me earlier this week.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, coming to you from the Brown Refrigeration Studios. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. There's just enough time for a final call or text at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And boy, Allan, did you trigger me? I'm not even an HVAC expert, but you basically said that you were working with somebody that they have a building and they need they're not going to be using it this summer, so they're just going to turn everything off. No HVAC, no electricity, and boy, that is a recipe for disaster. Some people might say, well, what's the big deal? Why shouldn't we just turn everything off? I'm just go ahead, Allan, because even I know what a disaster that's going to be.
It's the humidity of the amount of water your building will absorb. I had to help a friend, had a backed up drain on an HVAC in a home. So I had to go introduce them to the vacuum cleaner clean out trick. So I had to get all the weird stuff out of the line. And all right, just in your home, that air conditioner removes up to 50 gallons of water a day.
It's shocking when you think about how much water.
So that's how much water.
That's the air. That's air that we're just walking through and breathing.
And that's how much water would be absorbed into your home. Picture 50 fish tanks of water being absorbed by your house
in your curtains,
in a day.
In your sofa, in your carpet, in
your
everything.
Under your wallpaper.
Right.
So welcome to why the minute you, as I like to say, the minute you abandon a building, the minute you turn off all the utilities, it ages 10 years in one summer. And that's why.
Yeah.
It's the heat. It's, that sun coming through the window and it's the moisture. And all right, for those of you who very misguidedly love to like turn off your HVAC because you can suffer through the night or whatever, keep in mind 50 fish tanks of water being added to your home during that time.
Well,
now, if you want to move the temperature around, that's fine. But my goodness, take care of your facilities and keep your HVAC in good working order.
Well, I was going to say, because you could argue too, there may be, I remember growing up, because we had like window units and things in Chicago. There's some people in Chicago that don't even have air conditioning.
Right.
We're on that border. But, in August, you really need it. So they just turn everything off, then turn it back on. Okay, that might be different. Here, I actually think it's actually cheaper and more efficient to at least just put it on low. Like, don't crank it up.
Right.
Or don't crank it down to its lowest temperature, actually. But you don't just turn it off and on, and you definitely don't leave it off and on for months at a time. I'm just thinking of like I said, I was thinking of sometimes you look at a piece of furniture and somebody may ask, why did this split just suddenly appear across the top of this table and things like that? It doesn't make sense when you look at it. Nobody hit it with anything. Well, that's moisture. That's expansion and contraction.
And that goes back to you in painting the deck.
Yeah, my feelings about that.
Well, exactly, and tell them why. Why do you feel that way?
Because when I do not paint decks, I never will paint a deck. You'll have to drag me kicking and screaming. But the reason I don't is because when you paint a deck, okay, the idea might be, well, I'm going to paint this because it'll keep moisture out. Well, you can't keep moisture out. You're never going to keep moisture out of wood. But if it can't breathe, if you have raw wood and the water can come in and the water can go out, that's breathing. If you trap the moisture, you're trapping it. It's creating mold. It's going to rot. You're going to get termite. It doesn't work. It's a losing proposition. You're not keeping water out of an outdoor deck. Right. I guess unless you live in Arizona. Of course, then you don't have to worry about water.
Well, you have the other problem. You have desiccation instead of water. So,
but but it's like you said, the same holds true for inside of a building. So I hope you talk these folks out of it.
Oh yeah. Everybody agreed with me at the end, but we came up with a workable solution. But it was just that knee jerk, and I'm going to call it 1970s mom reaction. Well, we're going to lower the electricity bill, so we're going to turn the HVAC off at night, and we're all going to lay here and sweat. And sleep miserably, but our electricity bill went down $20.
Right.
And then I went, but your renovation bill went up $30,000.
I was about to say, how much do you spend on mold remediation and all the other stuff?
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, you did something else a little more enjoyable, right?
Because
you said you were indoors and outdoors.
Yeah, I was a little bit of everywhere doing stuff, and a couple of things I got to look at was gardens.
Okay.
Man, I have been all over gardens everywhere. And as a matter of fact, last night at a friend's garden, we picked a gallon of blackberries.
A gallon?
A gallon. That is a lot of blackberries. It's a beautiful season. A well-laid-out backyard, a well-laid-out little bit of landscaping is an absolute joy without adding a huge amount of work. And later this afternoon, I get my other little dream. I'm picking up a load of concrete board because I'm building that bathroom.
Okay.
We've designed it, we've laid it out, and we are going to do an all concrete board construction on this bathroom and see how the tiling goes and everything. So I've always had to repair them. This is the first time I've gotten to come in, raw studs, nothing else is installed, and we're going to do it from the get in all good wafer board.
So you're doing our backer board, whatever you want to call it. You're doing it on the floors and the walls too?
The whole thing. Any place where there is water, it is going to be a concrete board.
Yeah, and you're going to be glad you did, because then the tiles stay in place, especially when you start going up that wall.
To get this rolling.
That's what's nice about new construction. And a lot of times I think, too, when you're doing renovations at your home, the temptation might be to do as little amount of demo as possible. A lot of times it's less work to just take everything down to the studs and start with a blank canvas and just start fresh. And I actually think it's less work to do it that way.
So
I'm more enjoyable because, like you said, you set it up your way.
Yeah, I'm totally stoked to build this bathroom this week.
Hey,
I'm totally excited about it.
we don't want to get out of here before we plug our own stuff. So, what is Dark Oak Media up to this week?
Well, we're having a really good run with basically us at Geek Tank Radio, and of course the Food Dude from Thursday mornings. They've been fed a lot of really good stuff, up to and including fruit tarts and all kinds of wonderful, tasty desserts. So we've had a pretty good run. You can just pop over to tooltalkradio.com and get the link. And by the way, while you're there, like us, subscribe, and you can listen to literally years of content.
We're getting where we can legitimately say decades here soon.
Yeah,
we have
we're
an
pretty
anniversary
close.
coming
We are
up,
pretty
and it
close,
will be
man.
the 10-year anniversary. So that's always good. And if you're a content creator and you're weird, Alan will probably put your stuff on his channel over there. So, but Alan, fun show today, and I think I'm gonna celebrate this anniversary by watching the Blues Brothers tonight.
I think I'm going to join you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff, and thanks to everybody that texted in today. Howard, Michael, Agent 732 with some quality texts. I mean, good stuff. And let's just remind everybody, if you're out and about today and you want to go to Germantown, Amateur Ham Radio Day is there. It's interesting learning about ham radios. I always think of Art Bell when I think of ham radios, but it's a unique thing to do, and we would recommend it. Well, Alan, it's time to get out of here, man. So on behalf of my buddy Alan Gilbreth and our pal Max over there behind the glass, I'm Joe Thorderson. Thanks for listening to Tool Talk Radio, and we'll see you next week.